Hello, everyone. We're back once again, and also, yeah, we're doing this. But funny enough, it's how should I put this? I used to have a little redeem where we'd say all the titles of Settra here, just for funsies. Basically, see if you could get through all of them. Not in a single breath, because dear God, no. But we'd give it a try. Also, to the people in the or not the people in the comics, but the people in my streams asking for a body pillow of me. Why?
To
Just why?
hug,
Oh my god, don't join them
to
with my chat.
snuggle. Well, I didn't know the options on the table, and you have told me too much.
Oh my god, you don't need to join my Twitch chat on this. Anyway, Citra interests me because, well, we don't get a lot of Egyptian-inspired stuff anymore, unfortunately. Which, I feel like taking inspiration from different cultures is always fun. I mean, the last Egyptian-inspired thing that I saw was the Mummy movie, so... I still
You
love,
played tabletop with an Egyptian-inspired character.
when? What, what are you...
Black Quartz! Fucking Lori! The Cybertronian Sphinx!
Oh! Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot his character was like that. That's... You know that's not what I mean. Anyway. We're head into this.
A lot of people in history and fiction really enjoy having long titles in their names.
Yeah.
For example, go look up the full title of the Ottoman Empire's rulers. It's, quite long. And this...
What is it? I wanted to see what he said right there.
The Ottoman Empire's rulers. It's, quite long.
Well then.
I want to look up the full title of the... Let me see.
Google it.
Title of... Ottoman... Empires... Full title, not full... Okay, so it's Sultan. They're also entire includes Persia, Emperor, Khan...
No, that's AI generated.
Oh, I know, but it's looking at Wiki. Used by Sultan, Emperor, Khan, which... Oh, so they're going like... So basically they name themselves King, Emperor, Sultan, basically going through all the different like configurations.
I'm gonna try and read them.
One of them referred, apparently since they owned Constantinople at one point, they called them...
I found it.
What is it? Send me a
full,
link.
Full style of the Ottoman Sultan's stabilized Sultan given name, Han, sovereign of the sublime house of Osman, Sultan of sultans, Khan of khans, commander of the faithful, and successor of the prophet of the Lord of the universe, Caesar of Rome, custodian of the holy cities of Mecca, Medina, and Quds, Hadish of the three cities of Istanbul, Edirne, Imperishable, and of the cities of Damascus and Egypt, of all Azerbaijan, of the Maghreb, of Bukhara, of Karen, of Aleppo, of the Arab and Persian Iraq, of Basra, of El Hasa Strip, of Raqqa, of Mosul, of Parthia, of, I don't even know how to pronounce that one, of Sicilia, of the provinces of Azurum, of Cybus, of Adana. They just list off everywhere this guy rides dominion.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's president of fucking what states? Of Denver, of California, of San Francisco.
Yeah, pretty much.
Alaska, of Hawaii.
They're pretty much saying they are the leader. Basically, they're holding dominion over each part of these areas, but they're basically saying, I am the king, I am the Caesar, I am... Because basically those are the different titles of kings for those areas.
They list off so many different places and then have the audacity to end it with many other countries and cities.
course they do.
And this trend continues in Warhammer as well. As of Age of Sigmar, Archaon's full title is Archaon the Everchosen, the Three-Eyed King and Exalted Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse, which, fair's fair, I'd say he earned it. My insolent pump certainly seemed to think he earned it, but none of them have any more titles than the greatest king of Nehekara, ruler of the city of Khemri, and the man who would ensure his nation would be great for generations in life and even greater in death. He goes by many titles, but all even remotely versed in the history of malice. Anyone even slightly familiar with the great powers of the Warhammer world knows and fears the name Settra the Imperishable. Come with me and allow me to tell you a story of a great man who only became greater in death, and is yet another Warhammer fantasy character that proves the God Emperor of mankind really just isn't putting the work he could be into his job. It's kind of a running theme if you hadn't noticed.
No.
But before I begin, let me ask you this. Are you a male?
Also, I tried Magic Spoon today, and
certainly yes.
It's pretty
and
good.
Even if not, do you know a male? If
Yeah, but I also heard that
that's
it's pretty expensive
then have I got
relative
the thing for you
to
because this
how much
video
you
was
get.
sponsored by
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact for you, and by fun, I mean
don't get me wrong, it's
Did you know
tasty
that
and it's
2 out of
healthy,
3
but
men
it
will
costs.
experience hair loss by age 35? I should know, because every man in my family, aside from my grandfather, was bald by 30 at the latest. And as enough of you pointed out in my face reveal, my hairline and Senator Armstrong's apparently aren't that different from one another.
Oh my God.
Comments, by the way.
That's
well,
so
you know what
mean.
Keeps does? It lets you keep your hair. Eh? Get it? This fantastic service offers scientifically backed up treatments to prevent hair loss.
That reminds me, I have a video I need to
Endgame's
show you after this.
Research with this one, so you know the facts are there to support it. And here's a fun fact about myself for you. Despite being a diabetic, I haven't been to a non-endocrinology doctor's office in several years.
Really?
The mysterious pains I feel every day upon waking aren't that severe, so I don't plan to change this. Why in God's name did I bring that up? Because if you're like me and go into conniptions upon someone mentioning a doctor's appointment, you don't need to worry. You get expert level care from Keeps without ever actually having to visit a doctor. It gets delivered straight to your door. Not only do medical professionals with far more intelligence than I support it, but each treatment plan comes with a year of unlimited messaging, which means if you have any questions or concerns, you can just straight up ask one. If you don't think my word is good enough already, that is, which if that's the case, I'm a little hurt, but I understand. Oh, and despite the massive convenience of it being delivered right to your front door, there's no extra cost. In fact, Keeps is about half the price of pharmacy medications for hair loss. So if you're like me and you agonize at night over the time you lost $20 on an 8th grade field trip years ago, Keeps is perfect for you. Much like Soviet Russia in the early 1940s, it's time to stop that hairline from retreating any further. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/PancreasNoWork or click the link in the description of this video. That's KEEPS.com/PancreasNoWork. I have literally spelt it out for you, so what are you waiting for? Get Keeps today to save your hair tomorrow. Now it is time for the story of the man of many titles to begin. Before we fully start, and no, this isn't a second sponsorship reading, I should mention that he's had 2 incarnations in a way. His first one was similar to the second iteration of Settra, except he was only hated, and truth be told, he was kind of a shit king. Later on, they changed this, and I'll be using that version of him because it's a much better iteration of the character. Warhammer has enough characters that are nothing more than power-hungry douchebags. I don't care to add to the pile if I can help.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Warhammer has too many power-hungry D-bags, or douchebags, honestly. We don't need to add any more.
So, Settra was not the first king of Nehekara.
I mean, the power's there, and I'm fucking hungry.
The nation was by this point well established, and though it was powerful, it was disunited and ravaged by war, and the kings of the time had pretty much forgotten what they owed the Nehekaran gods. When the priest came to him and told him that only with the gods' approval could a Nehekaran king truly reign supreme with the love of his people, he actually listened. Presumably surprised someone was actually listening to them, they helped Settra secure a covenant with his deities. The tasks required to do this included, but are not limited to, building statues, holding prayer service, and sacrificing all of his children to prove his devotion to them. If nothing else, I'm pretty goddamn sure his devotion wasn't in doubt. And sure enough, the next day after he killed all his kids, the Nut Nile River flooded and ensured a bountiful harvest like never before, guaranteeing that Nehekara's long-lost wealth would begin to once more flourish and the people would forever love Settra. With the people and gods themselves now on his side, he found himself with no shortage of military recruits and began reconquering the lands of Nehekara under the banner of his city, Khemri. As it turns out, news travels fast in ancient Nehekara, and many other kings outright swore fealty to him. Those who didn't, well, picture them as any of the armies that tried to fight Alexander the Great, and you've got a pretty good idea of how they fared. And while Settra remained a cruel ruler as he did in his first iteration, he was not unkind. While Machiavelli might be one of the most misinterpreted writers in all of history, Settra followed his teachings well. He was feared, yes, but also loved. Well, if you went against his will, you were going to come down with a case of murder very quickly. He treated those under him with respect and fairness. It wasn't the Imperium where you're just thrown into the meat grinder because it's easier than not doing that. He actually loved his people.
This makes sense.
He wanted them to fear him.
He'll treat you well if you're good. If you're an asshole, he'll kill you.
Of that sentence. All of Nehekara.
Basically, if you go against him, you're dead. If you work for him and are loyal, then you're fine. It's very simple.
Nehekra, if you haven't noticed, is not all of the world. In
Yeah.
fact, if you look at the Immortal Empire's map, it's not even that much of it. This was an
Yeah.
absolutely unacceptable state of affairs.
Uh.
There were people out there who didn't know who Settra was.
Oh my
To rectify
God.
this grievous mistake, Settra sent his armies forth to conquer and spread his influence even farther. His armies reached as far as Austria, and according to the Warhammer Wiki, his name was feared around half the world. And you know what? I believe it. The High Elves and Dwarves might have been living their best lives by that point, but if Settra rolled around, he would have shown them what's what. Oh, you have the
Probably.
toughest armor known to exist that have mastered engineering like no other. Very interesting, but have you considered 500 chariots to the face? If you were wondering how he managed it all alone, believe it or not, he didn't. He graciously allowed some people to help him. There were, of course, the Nehekaran gods, who were undoubtedly honored to assist someone as majestic as mighty Settra, and naturally, his citizens and soldiers
God.
loved him as much as they feared to even slightly aggravate him, for his generosity was matched only by his temper. And he also had his right-hand man, Nakaf, whose name sounds suspiciously like Nagash, but fear not. Nakaf was no necromancer.
about
There
it.
was only a slight
Good.
possibility that he might have been descended from the Satan-worshipping Vikings. But to actually give the guy the credit he deserves, he was a herald bar excellence for Settra. If something needed to be smashed, he was part Viking. He could handle that no problem. The Varangian Guard can only wish they could have been half as effective as Nakaf at killing things. But he was also smart enough to make sure he remembered everything about Settra that was necessary to introduce him in courtly life and generally make sure people knew who he was. This might sound like nothing big, but remember, Settra is very full of himself.
Yeah,
While
he's
his
got an
heralds were
ego.
undoubtedly paid very well. If you screwed anything up, you were getting your head removed.
So he had to
when it was
remember
time
all
for
this.
Settra to make a diplomatic visit and his titles to be read off for 2 whole hours, Nakaf was the guy who had the unequaled honor of reading them off. He even
Dear
got
God.
one of Settra's old weapons, the Flail of Skulls, for his service. As time went on, however, eventually Settra realized his greatest enemy was still yet to be conquered.
Time.
Old age. While he lived for longer than any even among the not-Egyptians, whose lifespan was apparently longer than most people's, he was still slowly getting old, and that just wouldn't do. And so, Settra is the one who founded the Nehekaran mortuary cult and bid them to unlock the secrets of immortal life. Across the Warhammer world did they travel, looking for answers on how to live forever. And fair is fair to them, they made some pretty good progress on what they worked on. They invented mummification, so people's corpses still looked fashion show ready in death, and they prolonged lifespans by many centuries. Unfortunately, hundreds of years still isn't quite forever. Historically speaking, let's say someone has been alive for 300 years. They would predate the USA, and that's not saying much in the grand scheme of how long history's been going.
History's
Despite
been
Settra
going a
giving
long
them
time.
a blank check and probably
This
a
has been
few
going a
threats
long
to motivate
time. We've been
them to
around maybe 200 years tops.
Like I said, America has not been around that long, which is kind of crazy to think considering how much of a world power it is. But still, not
I was
been
just saying,
around.
considering how much of a fucking ego we have.
Well, yeah, kind of saving the world more than once, or finishing a world war more than once, kind of does that to a country.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Like I said, and quite literally, my history teachers also agree with me on this. The reason both of those wars ended is because we got involved. Anyway.
And now we can retell as many battles as we want and just swap out the people involved for Americans.
Oh my god. No.
I'll stop bitching about it when it stops happening.
Yeah, unfortunately, some people do. I like hearing all the stories, which we are going to watch a video from Fat Electrician, or you guys are going to see one eventually, where Fat Electrician does talk a lot about American stories, usually, World War II ones, but he does talk about a few ones that aren't American, like the White Death during the Finnish Winter War. Ugh, I'm coughing so much. Anyway, back to Settra and his lovely, magnanimous kingdom and all that, and learning how to avoid death.
Fury cult couldn't find the recipe for immortality. Evidently, none of the dragon rulers in Cathay were green and yellow. Despairing that not only were there places whose armies he hadn't yet thrashed, as well as the possibility that in death everything he worked for would be undone, Settra reluctantly admitted that there was one enemy he couldn't conquer. For now, that is. And so did he order the largest pyramid in the history of Germany, and indeed all of Nehekara constructed. It towered over all, and while subsequent rulers would follow in his footsteps and build their own, none would dare make it taller than Settra's. That would have probably been enough to make him revive himself, if only so he could pimp slap whoever had the gall to do that.
Yeah.
When his last breath finally came, he was entombed alongside his entire goddamned army. All of it. Just thrown in the massive basement of the thing, and presumably told that it truly was an honor to die alongside their king. Really. Trust me. Though to be fair, in Settra's case, it was an honor to die with him. In the
God damn it,
original
I
version of
forgot to
Settra, the
mute.
people rejoiced when the tyrant finally died. In the good version of Settra, upon his death, the entire nation mourned the loss of the greatest monarch to ever live.
Aw.
The entire thing was covered in potent
The
wars,
mighty
safe from
monarch?
the British looking to do
No.
entire nation mourned the loss of the greatest monarch to ever live. The entire thing was covered in potent wards to keep it safe from the British looking to do some aggressive archaeology, and the
That's
mortuary
fair.
cult promised that as soon as they could, they would revive Settra to bring about another endless golden age. They even said they'd give him a cool living golden body once they figured it out. The kings of Nehekra would do their best to live up to Settra's legacy, and while they never could, that's no fault of their own. Imagine an Olympic athlete trying to live up to the standards of Kratos. Can't be done, but that's hardly something to beat yourself up over.
Yeah.
Nehekra still prospered for well over
There's no
1,000 years
reason to
after
get over
Settra's
it.
death, coming more and more in
You get mad
contact with
over
the
it.
outside world, such as with Cathay, and generally being the best human civilization around. The mortuary cult learned
Yeah.
much since his passing, furthering their ability to preserve corpses in death and learning how to perform magic. The worst that can really be said was that during the reign of King Thutep, Khemri was looking a bit weak compared to the other cities in Nehekra. While Settra would have thrown the mother of all temper tantrums at learning that his capital city was falling behind the others, if one city becoming less
Yeah.
influential was the worst thing to happen during Thutep's reign, then I'd say he did fine. Unfortunately, that
it's
being the
nothing
worst
too
thing that
bad.
happened was not the case,
Oh.
because Thutep's older
Wonderful.
brother was named Nagash.
Oh.
I already covered him in another video, but to make it relevant here, Nagash's final act before his death, one of his deaths anyway, was to kill everyone in Nehekra with magic and revive them under his control.
Of
Unfortunately
course.
for him, he came down with a bad case of chopped into pieces, courtesy of Al-Qadizar and the Skaven of all people, but the damage
Wow.
was already done.
Skaven.
Across all of Nehekra,
Oh.
the dead woke from their slumber. Some had been gone for millennia and were little more than bones. Others were only just slain by Nagash and still had all their meaty bits attached. But of most interest were the buried rulers of the land, now known as Tomb Kings, and the armies they took with them. Because they took a page out of Settra's book in more ways than one, their tombs were all lined with arcane wards, and as such they were protected from the worst of Nagash's magic. They were revived, certainly, but not as mindless thralls.
They
had
were in
all their
full
wits
control.
about them and came to with shock and horror over what Nagash had wrought. Of course,
Yeah.
there were other problems to deal with. Let's run through a scenario. One Tomb King revives, and he sees that his son ended all the trade agreements he negotiated in order to make himself look powerful. He's probably not too happy.
Rip.
In turn, his son hates his grandson, who married a noblewoman from a family he bickered with his entire reign, who in turn hates his great-granddaughter because she tossed his favorite throne into a trash heap, who in turn hates his great-great-grandson because he tried to sell bits of her pyramid away to pay for his gambling addiction.
This sounds like a worse version of the Game of Thrones where the families all hate each other and try to kill each other, but it's worse because everyone's coming back and see what the other ones did. This doesn't look good. At all. So, yeah, not good. In the slightest. This is a worse kind of Game of Thrones.
This is a single dynasty's worth of infighting that comes up as a result of thousands of years of lineage all trying to have their own way. And I mean, how would you even fix that?
I
Overall,
don't know.
The rightful king is one of the problems. You can't say one of them had any more or less right to rule.
Yeah,
Now imagine them
they're all
multiplied
related.
across the entirety of Nehekra, as all of the dynasties have all of their members revive at once and try and take charge. Combine
my
this with
God.
all of the fighting each dynasty would have with other dynasties, and please do remember this is all on top of Nagash wrecking the place with his antics. Things were not looking good, and the mortuary cult was completely unable to maintain any semblance of order. After years
Yeah,
of
I'm not
infighting, they realized that
surprised.
without drastic measures, there was a pretty good chance the Tomb Kings were going to destroy Nehekra with their petty wars. And thus did Gren, Hierophant, Katep make a drastic decision: revive Settra the Imperishable and throw him at everyone so they all shut up for 5 minutes.
Yeah, that
On
would
account
work.
of it being better than everyone else's, his
Oh, what was that?
Just laughing at get everyone to shut up for a few minutes.
Well, I mean, he is the original Grand King. It's quite literally if Alexander the Great showed back up and said, "Yeah, I'll stop this now." Can you really say no to him? You can try, but he's now undead and probably more powerful.
pyramid was untouched by Nagash's sorcery. This also meant his army was unravaged by the war that was consuming Nehekra. The Tomb Kings may all be functionally immortal, but it still takes some time for them to respawn, you see. And Khemri didn't see nearly as much fighting as the other cities, if only because no one wanted to dick with Settra's place. They woke up and pretty quickly went to smashing mummy heads together until they sat down and stopped stabbing each other in the empty rib cages. Anyone who refused to swear fealty to him had their skulls repurposed as self-replenishing catapult ammunition, which was also lit on fire, so people learned to take him seriously again. His terms were fair enough. Swear fealty to him. When he needs something, you better goddamn listen. And you can fight each other to your heart's content, but for the love of God, when something important is happening, you better cut the crap for a few days. After that, he sat down with the
Honestly, that's all pretty reasonable. You can fight each other, but when something big happens, cut the crap, we all gotta work together. He's being pretty reasonable, all things considered. Even in death, I guess
Indeed.
Settra can be reasonable.
The mortuary cult and demanded they explain why he didn't have a body made of pure gold yet. They explained Nagash's shenanigans to him, and he was just perhaps a slightly bit peeved off. He banished Ketep until he could come back with the secrets of a golden body, so Settra wasn't just a partially decayed living corpse anymore, and set to work rebuilding his kingdom. He would always keep an eye out for the return of Nagash, and frequently tried to destroy his Black Pyramid, partly because it was a massive eyesore of evil magic, partly because it was bigger than Settra's, and that wasn't something he was going to accept lying down.
Of course
Never
not.
worked, though, unfortunately. He should have borrowed a few nukes from the Skaven. He was
Probably.
always successful at stopping Arcan whenever he tried to do something big, though, so he wasn't completely helpless against Nagash. He also continued
seems like
expanding his ever-increasing list of titles with various exploits that would make anyone look bad by comparison. One time, some moron was dicking around with magic and accidentally opened a portal to chaos in the middle of Khemri, which naturally meant demons were now all over the place, pissing on the Tomb King's sandy lawns. Settra took this in stride and casually soloed a great unclean one before throwing the guy who started this whole mess into the portal. That's all things, if for no other reason the Chaos Gods were scared Settra would walk.
Yeah, you didn't know that's what the Nurgle, the greater demons of Nurgle are called. Great unclean ones.
Have some fucking soap.
No, though you should probably throw soap at them. It might hurt them. But yeah, he just killed it immediately and then threw the guy who made the portal into the portal.
Walk into the portal and have words with them personally on the matter. Another time, gods were scared Settra would walk into the portal and have words with Lawns. Settra took this in stride and casually soloed a great unclean one before throwing the guy who started this whole mess into the portal. That solved things, if for no other reason that the Chaos Gods were scared Settra would walk into the portal and have words with them personally on the matter. Another time when demons were suddenly a thing, Settra was feeling generous and graciously allowed an army of high elves to help assist him in getting rid of the chaotic threat. Not that he needed their help, of course. He could have walked down there alone and dealt with the problem by himself. He just felt like being kind to the peons who had come so far to deal with this threat even though they needn't have bothered. Even let them leave with their lives after the fact. And then there was the time he burned down half of Norska to get his hat back. At some point, some idiot Norskin figured that looting from the dead must be easy peasy. Unfortunately, the dead he wanted to loot from were from Khemri, and neither rested peacefully nor, well, at all, really. Settra isn't one to let a little thing like death get in the way of workplace productivity, after all. The Norskin did manage to get a mutual kill on Settra, so thank God he didn't go to any other place in the Warhammer world, or he would have probably burned the entire place to the ground. And by the time the battle had ended, the entire Tomb King army was slain. They gave as good as they got, though, and only 12 Norskin survivors remained from the entire army.
Only 12,
They took as much treasure as they could with them, went back home, and used it to become the leaders of whatever tribes they returned home to. Unfortunately for them, Tomb Kings respawn, and when Settra did, he was pissed. Not only had they taken his things, but the lieutenant of the guy he traded kills with stole his crown. He sent out spies across the world to find him, which wasn't really that hard. When there's suddenly an influx of a dozen newly minted Chaos Lords, all of whom are wearing suspiciously Nehekaran-looking clothing, it's not hard to put two and two together to get four. As in, Settra's going to make you beg to your 4 gods to put you out of your misery the moment he gets his hands on you.
Yeah,
he set out, and soon enough there were 12 less Chaos Lords in existence and several thousand less Norskins and Chaos Monsters in existence. Do keep in mind that Settra is roughly in Egypt, while Norska is in the Arctic Circle if we're using Earth terms. Do not fuck with his stuff. Anyways, now it's time for End Times lore. Settra is probably the best.
End Times lore. No one likes End Times lore. Let's all be honest here. And Settra is a cool dude. But dear God, End Times butchers everyone as far as I've seen. Except for Manfred von Karstein, but he's Manfred von Karstein. No one likes him.
Yeah, no, he's already made my shit list just for the pirate thing.
Yeah. He seems... there's not a lot of winners in the End Times. There is a winner in that... There is a winner in the fact of... Well, Slaanesh, the god of pleasure and pain, was forcibly trapped and chained in between the realms of light and darkness and forever stuck there. And not allowed to do her thing. No, like, her followers can't even find her, they don't know where she is, and in fact she's been sealed away, and they were able to... Basically, the new gods of the elves sealed her away. And I hope she stays there forever, because I hate her.
Dark side? Alright, and the new gods?
No. Basically, there's a weird thing where some of the leaders of the elves got transformed into gods upon Age of Sigmar happening, and Slaanesh was too... Well, basically, she ate too much elf souls and was stuck in there. It's a whole thing, but basically, she's stuck now. I'm happy. Never, ever release her again. please, GW, just let her stay sealed away forever. She
How
is
much
at
does
least...
Slanesh mini go for?
There's, like I said, 4 Chaos Gods, and she's the one I hate the most. So yes, seal her away. Forever and ever and ever and ever. What?
No, Daemons of Slanesh, Secrets of Slanesh. How much does Games Workshop charging for the actual fucking Slanesh mini?
The gods don't have a mini. Or, the Chaos Gods don't have minis.
I'm very surprised by that.
Huh. I'm surprised that you're surprised by this.
Let's be real. Like, there would probably be the rules of, oh yeah, you can't put them on the tabletop, but like, Games Workshop passing up a chance for a quick buck?
You're not wrong on that.
Best part of End Times lore, since the Nagash book wasn't total garbage and Settra's badass even to the end. But because
that's
the End
good.
Times make me angry, I've decided to take it out on all of you. Therefore,
Oh,
it is
boy.
my pleasure to announce that you are now drinking manually. Your tongue is not comfortably resting in your mouth.
Oh, what?
Therefore, it is my pleasure to announce
Fuck
that you are now
you!
drinking manually. Your tongue is not comfortably resting in your mouth.
Oh
your
my
jaw
God,
is
you're
limply
doing
hanging
this?
from your skull, and
Why?
you're not sure if you should close it or let it hang. And somewhere on your body, there's an
Oh my
itch you had not
God.
realized until I brought it up just now. Now that everyone wants to cause me physical harm,
No, I
we
knew
need
about
to
the-
discuss the
I knew
end
about the
times.
itch.
Just prior to the end
God.
times, Settra had reawakened all the Tomb Kings at once to begin a great period of expansion, so that all the world
Ah.
would love and fear the name Settra the Imperishable. Then
Makes
they got
sense.
word that Arkan and Manfred were fast-tracking Nagash's latest resurrection and rapidly switched to fortifying the hell out of Nehekara. To
Makes
stop
sense.
them, Nagash covered the entire land in magical darkness, which proceeded to do nothing. They just kept building. Kind of to scare a bunch of people who may or may not have spent millennia dead by turning out the lights, let alone the skeletons that are largely just mindless automata. Arkan
Yeah.
showed up
The
to lead the charge
skeletons.
into Nehekara, and how well do you think he did by going 1v1 against Settra? If you said Settra bisected him and chained him into his chariot, then you're correct. Unfortunately, Nagash was playing 5D chess during this time period and planned for it. Somehow, Nagash snuck himself into Nehekara using Arkan's body. I
What?
don't know how. I don't want to know how. All I can tell you is that some traitorous Lich Priest cast a spell on a different Lich Priest to stun him, and then Nagash reversed forward out of Arkan. Nagash
What?
has finally returned to his ancient home and begins dueling the Imperishable. And after Nagash had not only returned to life in his strongest form yet, but devoured the power of the god of the dead Usirian, he still couldn't beat Settra. Settra
Oh.
Tokyo drifted around Nagash in his chariot for quite some time until Nagash eventually managed to break it. And so they entered a battle of wills.
Oh.
Whatever the hell that means, I don't know, but Settra's willpower was equal to that of Nagash's. A reminder,
Oh.
Nagash is now for all intents and purposes a god, and Settra was still his equal. So
Oh.
Nagash, being the bastard he is, just swarms Settra and ghosts until he can pick him up. While he's manhandling him, Nagash demands Settra's fealty to him, and Settra responds with, "Go fuck yourself, skelly man." Not, not literally.
This is his actual words. Settra does not serve. Settra rules. Which is a pretty badass line. I won't lie.
Yeah, I still prefer Megatrons do not yield. We conquer!
Oh my God.
The actual line was much cooler, and it's
David
on screen
K,
right
man,
now,
he has
so you
the
can see
coolest
it.
voice.
I'm just not much of a voice actor, so I'm not going to sully Settra's good name by butchering his quote. Of course,
Ah.
as cool as the quote is, Nagash didn't really care and just blew up his body before forcing Settra to watch as he burned Khemri to the ground. It was in this
Aw.
moment, and only this moment, mind you, that Settra ever felt anything close to despair as his kingdom was torn apart from under him by the greatest enemy his people had ever known. That lasted for all of 5 minutes after Nagash left until 4 mysterious figures put him back together, gave him a Dragon Ball Z Zenkai boost, and bade him go north for revenge. I wonder who they could be. 4 mysterious figures telling him to go north where all the evil Vikings are invading?
Oh,
Mystery for
no.
the
Who
Ages
could it
Games
be?
Workshop. Wow, very impressive. Anyways, after
It's
the
the
not
Chaos
four not
Gods.
gods of not chaos tell him to go north, he does. All the way to Middenheim.
Uh,
on foot. Then when he gets there,
On
he
foot.
approached Archaon as an ally. Now, you might be saying, that's
What?
bullshit, GW is ruining Settra, but in perhaps the only instance I'll ever see anything like this, give the people writing the end time some credit.
What?
Yeah, that tasted bad. Archaon
Yeah.
tells him to kill Kolic Sun Eater since he's too much of a loose cannon, so Settra does. He just kills Kolic the Sun Eater, one of the largest and strongest creatures in the Warhammer world, just cuts his head off. Before the Incarnates
Okay.
arrive in Middenheim to stop the end of the world, Settra wandered off to who knows where for a while, having a good think. When they finally did arrive, Settra confronts Nagash, telling him that the Chaos Gods resurrected him to kill Nagash. He then proceeded to behead a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth in one blow, which I will remind you is an enemy so tough even Gotrek and Felix struggled against one, and that he was going to personally kill the
No!
Chaos
Gotrek
Gods
and
for
Felix do
daring to
not struggle. They're too awesome. The power of bro compels them.
And bullshit. Anyway.
and
Most
Felix
of the
struggled
bullshit.
against one, and that he is going to personally kill the Chaos Gods for daring to offer him a chance to serve them. Against one, to resurrected him to kill Nagash. He then proceeded to behead a dragon over Shaggoth in one blow, which I will remind you is an enemy so tough even Gotrek and Felix struggled against one, and that he is going to personally kill the Chaos Gods for daring to offer him a chance to serve them. He says that he will temporarily forgive Nagash for his transgressions, though his head is next after the Chaos Gods.
God
and
damn!
He's last seen bulldozing his way through the mains of chaos as the world falls apart around him. Just in case you weren't aware, this makes Settra the single being in Warhammer, either 40k or fantasy, who is offered everything there is to be by chaos with no strings attached, from power to worship and even a fully restored golden body like he wanted, and tell them to eat shit. Because Settra does not serve, Settra rules. Now that's how chaos the finger. As for Age of...
I kind of want this as a poster now, because that takes some balls. Telling someone where you'll get everything they want just if they serve you and saying, no, fuck you.
Sigmar, there's been little word of Settra. Now, if you're aware of a certain character called Settra leading a group of Stormcast called the Imperishables that just happens to have a special hatred for Nagash, you might be calling BS on this, but hear me out. There's a few reasons I don't think that's actually Settra, or at least that's not how they're bringing Settra back, truly. One, while the Stormcast forging process removes certain personality flaws, and undoubtedly one of those to be removed would be Settra's complete unwillingness to take any shit from anyone, he was so full of himself that he told the Chaos Gods themselves to go to hell after being offered everything, and one of his voice lines in Total Warhammer is him telling elves in diplomacy that their arrogance cannot possibly match his because he is Settra. Not because he's
I love that.
thousands of years older than even most of them, not because he's the king of all the Tomb Kings, but because he's Settra. There is no chance he could have removed Settra's arrogance and unwillingness to serve. I don't care.
Yeah. If you say to someone your arrogance doesn't match mine because I'm Settra, that's also a hell of a line.
How strong or crafty Sigmar is. Two, while they did axe the Tomb Kings, I cannot for the life of me believe they won't bring back some kind of
Yeah, they need to bring them back.
Maybe that's a fool's hope, but I really think they'll do something like that down the line, and Settra would be perfect to head that charge. Three, and most importantly, if I understand correctly, Settra's was Settra, but GW told the author that created him they couldn't bring him back in that manner. Settra sacrificed himself to tell Manfred von Comstain to go lick bricks, and Stormcast Hamilcar said he was gone forever. Aside from that being the perfect situation to go, he's not actually gone because he's so badass, it also brings the perfect way to bring him back as he was. He got blown up, the bits of his soul wandered the mortal realms for a while and found some spicy lost knowledge about the old world, bing bang boom, he's Settra again. But for now, the story of the Imperishable comes to a close. Of course I don't think he's done yet.
No,
he's
he can't be.
A well-deserved
He's
break
too
before he
cool.
forms the lesser people of the mortal realms, aka
people
all
like
of them
him too
except
much.
Celestin Prime, who is of course Karl Franz, of their place in life. And that place is to be cared for by the second greatest monarch to ever exist. The other option, of course, is to be used as more catapult ammunition. Thank you to my wonderful channel members. You are the magic. Magic is the only explanation for them staying together. If you'd like to support the channel...
Yeah. Magic do be like that.
Yeah.
Seriously though, the Tomb Kings as characters are all more successful than the Emperor is. Oh, I'm dead? Cool, guess I'll just pick myself up and keep at it. Why would I sit on my throne all day? I've got shit to do. For anyone about to mention that the Emperor has to contend with keeping a massive chaos shut as well as lighting the Astronomicon, consider that someone like Settra simply would not allow those to be problems. How would Settra fix those issues? Well, he would intervene, obviously.
He has a thing against the Imperium of Man. You can probably tell that. I want to show you something before we end this video. Titles. Can I find the list of his titles? Yeah, here it is. Oh my Settra, Gate King. This is his titles, and this isn't even all of them. Can you see them?
Well, I can't read them, but I can understand the text density.
Yeah. Anyway, thank all of you for coming by. If you like Settra, tell us what you like about him down below. And we'll see you all later. Like, comment, subscribe if you want us to watch more of PancreasNoWorks, and we'd always be happy to. And I'll see you all later. My throat's hurting. Yeah, guys.